Welcome to this lecture on motor development. I want to start off with a quote from our text by Mary Jane McGuire-Frong, a quote from Emmy Pickler that ties together so eloquently and beautifully the relationship between motor development and overall learning and thinking. In the course of her motor development, a baby learns how to turn over onto her belly, to roll over, crawl, sit, stand, and walk. But she also learns how to learn. She learns to tackle something on her own, to take interest in something, to try something out, to experiment. She learns to overcome difficulties. She experiences the joy and satisfaction that comes with success, the result of her patience and perseverance. When we think of motor development, we tend to think of a developmental timeline involving the major milestones. But what about all the learning and action that takes place leading up to the major milestones? What can movement in general tell us about what an infant might be thinking, their thoughts, feelings, and intentions? If we look closely and understand the progression of motor development, we can see how through movement the infant is exploring and investigating and making meaning of themselves as well as the world around them. It is important to note that perceptual development and motor development go hand in hand. This lecture is going to focus on motor development. However, when observing children, planning curriculum, setting up contexts and environments, selecting toys and materials to introduce, it's important to be aware of the relationship between these areas. Perceptual development can be defined as the developing ability to become aware of the social and physical environment through the senses. Gross or large motor development is the developing ability to move the large muscles, and fine motor refers to the developing ability to move the small muscles. An example of the relationship between perceptual development and motor development is an infant turning their head toward a familiar voice or reaching for an object that they see. Younger infants explore their surroundings through their senses. Older infants use their senses to make choices in the way they interact with the environment. For example, a toddler may adjust the way they're walking based on the texture of the surface, or sit on their bottom to go down a slope of stairs. Babies come into this world wired for survival with a set of movements that ensure just that. Reflexes such as rooting, sucking, and stepping are all movements that are done without conscious intention. These reflexes eventually diminish as they're replaced with voluntary actions. There are two directional trends that occur. One is that the development of the muscle system happens from the top down, or head to toe. This is called cephalocaudal development. The other is that the development of the muscle systems happens from the inside out, from the core to the extremities, referred to as proximal distal development. You can see here a visual of the muscle development progression, starting with the neck and shoulder muscles. Usually one of the first motor development milestones noticed is the baby beginning to hold their head up. Then the shoulders, used for pushing up. Next, the ability to control the torso muscles occurs when is needed for rolling over. Then the maturation of the muscles in the hips, needed for sitting up. And lastly, the legs and feet, which enable standing and walking. Here we have a visual showing proximal distal development, muscle development from the inside out, starting with the core muscles, moving out to the arms and legs, moving outward more to the hands and feet, and then finally to the fingers and toes. This can be seen in the developmental progression of the grasp, starting with the arm batting at objects, then grabbing with the whole hand, and lastly grabbing with fingers, first together and then separate. These movements are grouped into two categories, as mentioned before: fine motor, that of the small muscles, and gross motor, that of the large muscles. A motor development scale is used to describe the typical course of development and identify developmental delay. This is done by looking at a range of time from the earliest a developmental milestone occurs to the latest it occurs, as well as an average age for an infant to accomplish the milestone. This information is also helpful when planning environments and appropriate toys to support infant motor development. There are different sequences of motor development. This is a large motor sequence of an infant going from laying flat on their tummy to standing upright. There are many things that happen in between these developmental accomplishments, but the idea is that all typically developing children will go through this large motor sequence in order. First, they use their arms to push their shoulders off the ground. Then they use their torso and hips to push up into a seated position. And lastly, they use their arms and hands to pull into a standing position. The sequence of locomotion, or moving from place to place, starts with rolling over, which is a whole progression in itself that we'll talk about next, to a pre-walking progression, which can look different depending on the child. This can be the traditional crawling on hands and knees. Creeping looks like a scooting on stomach, or hitching, which is where the infant is in a sitting position and using legs to pull themselves forward. Next is cruising, when the infant is standing and moving from place to place while holding on to something for balance. And finally comes walking without holding on to anything. Rolling over is a big milestone and takes time to fine-tune. The progression starts with going from their back to their side, as seen in this picture. This requires a lot of effort and balance. The range for this skill is 2 to 7 months, with the average age being 4.4 months. Here, infants have a whole new perspective of their surroundings and sometimes can take a couple months in between mastering this skill and moving on to rolling completely over from their back to their stomach. The range for rolling from back to stomach is 4 to 10 months, with an average age of 6.4 months. Crawling is the next big motor development skill. This act of getting from place to place is usually encouraged by their interest in their surroundings, such as toys. There are many variations of crawling. Some were mentioned before. Infants can get really creative when they want to get around. My son, who is now 5, did an interesting thing where in a sitting position he would use one arm and fist and the opposite leg to scoot around, sort of like a monkey. It's hard to explain, but he was so fast. He was faster than a lot of the other kids at the playground who were running around. The age range for crawling is 5 to 11 months, with an average age of 7.1 months. Sitting up independently includes getting into a seated position on their own without the help of others. This skill occurs between 6 to 11 months, and on average at 8.3 months. Here's something to think about regarding motor development in infants. Baby seats are a common item in our culture. There are ones that bounce, vibrate, play music. But think about what it's like for an infant to be left to play in a seat like this. What possibilities do they have to move around and practice all the things we just talked about, like rolling on their side, rolling all the way over, pushing up with their arms, or crawling? What about propping babies up? It's not uncommon to see a baby that hasn't learned to sit up on their own propped in some fashion into a sitting position. There are many popular items that are meant for supporting babies in a sitting position. Consider what disadvantages this might have for babies whose muscle system are preparing for crawling or getting into a sitting position on their own. What development does being propped in a sitting position hinder in terms of motor skills? Next, in the large motor sequence, is pulling to a standing position, which happens between 5 to 12 months and on average at around 8.1 months. The pulling piece of this skill is important to note because it is the arm muscles more than the leg muscles that are helping. At this point, the infant is getting around from place to place in some form of crawling and is able to sit up on their own. Again, this milestone is usually motivated by something of interest in the environment and the urge to explore with their senses. The average age for getting down from a standing position is 9.6 months, with a range between 7 to 14 months. This is, on average, about a month after developing the skill of pulling to standing. This makes sense when you think of the cephalocaudal development, because the leg muscles are needed to lower the body down and are still developing. The average age for pulling to standing, again, is 8.1 months, and for sitting down from standing is 9.6 months. So that's over a month difference. Think about a child you may have seen that just learned to pull themselves up to a standing position. Have you ever noticed them seem stuck? Sometimes they may cry or look for a caregiver. Think about how the noted ages helps explain this behavior, and also think about ways that infants at this stage can be supported by caregivers as well as their environment. Finally, the grand finale comes walking independently. The age range for beginning to walk independently is 9 to 17 months, and the average age is 11.7 months. Notice how wide that range is. Cruising occurs between pulling to standing and walking independently and can last for months. Once infants do start walking independently, it takes years to master the skill. Once confidence in walking independently is gained, then climbing is the next obstacle to explore. With all of these milestones and developing motor skills, there's the opportunity to encourage and support exploration. Some examples of ways to support crawling, pulling to stand, and cruising is to provide surfaces to crawl over, such as pillows and low platforms, spaces to crawl through, and surfaces or objects to use in pulling to standing and cruising from place to place. Here is a picture of infants playing on a raised surface. Large foam blocks allow them to crawl over, sit on top of, and also provide a slant or slope for them to explore. There is a tunnel to crawl through, and also stairs to go up and down. Look at this space with ramps, stairs, slides, rugs, and dowels to climb. Think about how this environment supports cruising, walking, and climbing. Mastery at each level of motor development provides a strong foundation for mastery of the subsequent level. With that in mind, let's think about a baby who has not yet learned to crawl and is placed in a bouncer like the one in this picture. What do you think they experience when placed in a seat like this to play? Is this helpful or a hindrance to their motor development? Keep this scenario in mind as I ask the following questions. Consider cephalocaudal and proximal distal trends. Which muscle systems are at work as an infant figures out how to crawl, to push up, to pull up, and to sit up? Which should get more work, the upper body and torso, or the lower body and legs? Which muscle systems get worked when an infant is in a device such as a bouncer, like the one in the picture on the previous slide? Knowing about motor development, sequences, milestones, and developing skills, think about how you would set up a play space for infants birth to 9 months that would support them in their journey from non-mobile to crawlers. Think about rolling, sitting up, and pulling up. Now with older infants or toddlers, what furnishings would you include in the play space to support mobile infants in becoming walkers? Also think about what furnishings you would avoid and why. And for older toddlers, what could you include in the play space to support mastery of balance and more complex locomotion such as climbing and jumping? Here is an example of a planning question around movement as the context for learning. The teacher asks, Will the boxes and low surfaces invite crawlers to pull to standing? Will the toys placed atop